Or who was that, Lorian?
Yeah, it was me.
Okay.
Right, well, I'm glad.
There we
this happened.
go. Got it now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Brooke, for making sure.
Yeah.
And for others for letting us know. So, okay, I expect lots more chat this meeting. So, again, welcome back, session 4 of 4. So we're going to focus mostly today on really learning about your preferences regarding design language. So this was coined the how session. Really, how do we do this? Well, all the things we've talked about help us understand why we want to do this project, who's going to use it, what's going to be in it. Now we want to talk about how we might actually execute it at a high level of understanding. So we're going to do a little recap of what we've heard so far. We're going to have a story from Kifa. We're going to give a little presentation about our approach to design to lead in to really the meat of our presentation today, or our session today, which is going to focus on understanding the design language that we might think is appropriate for this project. And then we'll finish off with a little fun activity at the end about what we think the press release might be when the building opens. So Ranya's going to give us an overview of the last few sessions.
So a little recap of the last session. Thank you for Chef Lou and Kifa for sharing stories and sharing a poem. You told us about what makes PCS a physical space, a special area to gather and eat and, share poetry maybe. Next slide. And we had our a special guest speaker, Piers Freelon, who inspired us all to look for creativity within our communities. He told us about his project, Black Space, that's his team on the top left. And he told us a little bit about his father, Phil Freelon, and the museum at DC, which was very inspiring to hear. We also had a little activity, and you guys told us about the priorities for the program. So this is snippets from the Mentee. Few of the priorities you had is like for the common spaces to have an open, flexible room for people to gather. And for the squash area, it looks like it's very important to have a viewing area for watching the games. Other places that you guys suggested was an outdoor picnic area for barbecue or for gathering, a fireplace maybe for the winter gathering activities, and then a storage area, a garden maybe to grow some edible plants in there, and then a multi-level story or a mezzanine. So here is few of the votes that you guys voted for, the spaces that you guys voted for last time. For the daily and socializing common space, the highest votes was this number, the photo highlighted in red. Looks like a cozy space where you can sit quietly or meet other people, and there's a green area and a glass that's showing to the outdoor. So this got 10 votes, and the other photos that shows the votes next to it as well. So the first photo got 6 votes, the second photo got 4 votes, the third photo got 8 votes, and then it looks like between the third and the fourth photo is what you guys mostly preferred for a common or a daily space. Next slide. And then for the study area, you guys also voted for the 2 that is highlighted in red. Looks like it's an equal votes. More like a space for people to chat together for studying or doing homework or mentoring maybe. So these were the best 2 you guys selected. Next slide. And for the cultural and special event gathering, The third photo highlighted here as well is got the highest votes, which looks like a place for big gatherings where people, you know, can come from the public and not like specifically a specific seating arrangement or a screen even. Next slide. And for the viewing area, you guys voted for the one that had the skylight or sunlight coming from the ceiling, which is interesting and very cool design too. Next slide. And last but not least, the outdoor space. This is the photo that got the most votes. Not completely a covered area, but maybe partially covered with flexible seating and fun hardscape and landscape, soft and hard scapes.
And Rania, I would say that a lot of these could be one space that has a lot of flexibility and agility to adapt to multiple environments. And I see that in a lot of the selections, so that's good.
Mm-hmm. Great. And a few of the photos from the homework. Thank you everyone for sending it. So this is a collection of the homework photos that you guys sent. Looks like this is more of a cozy area with a wooden interior space. We got a lot of photos that's similar to this. So next slide. And then there is also ideas of making it more modern and sleek and neat and white. These are also photos that you guys shared with us. Thank you for that. And we got also photos that looks like, you know, a special seating arrangement and some plants hanging from the ceiling, you know, some fun interior spaces or some fun furniture. A double height ceiling is also something that we saw a lot. So that's something that's good. All great ideas.
Rania, can we, like, just for example, ask someone to just chime in here for 1 second to say what was it about this that inspired them for this? Because it's really good to hear their voice a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Who
Jeff Liu, I think, had that top right image. Yeah. Maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, because it's open, like, and there's greenery, the plants. It has a certain stylish element to it, and I think it would really enhance the space as it exists today.
Thank you.
Just wanted to make note that a lot of people said, oh, an all white space wouldn't necessarily reflect the community, although there were a couple of all white, very pretty clean options. Does anybody want to talk about that and talk about how that might be the right solution versus others? I think that was on a couple slides back. It's a pretty clean.
I feel like all white might be, here, let me turn on. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, I feel like all white might be beneficial just because, like, it leaves the space open for, like, art to come up or come down, or like the space to be turned into like something, if there's like an event turned into like a specific theme and stuff. So like if you leave it white, like that doesn't necessarily mean people's like work can't be shown off or like things like that. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm more like thinking of a museum or a blank canvas where what's displayed.
And then you can keep displaying different stuff, new stuff, or yeah.
So there's a definite contrast between the sort of wood interior, the wood structure, as well as the plants You know, maybe making something a little more interpretive relative to the community, things that Pierce talked about last time we met, versus having something that's pretty simple and clean where the art becomes the statement.
Yeah, I think there's also photos that we got the last slide that shows a lot of texture and expression. Like here, you can see that there is plants on the walls, and there is textures on the ceilings and different like specific aesthetics for the lighting. So this is something that's more cultural versus the very white space.
Who sent this in? I have to know.
I think that's Barrett.
Yeah, these were some of my selections.
Yeah,
The
they're
high
beautiful.
the high ceilings, and then with the wood textured one on the top right was just a play on multiple levels.
Yeah, they're very beautiful. Good, nice images.
Mhm.
So I think that a lot of those kind of questions, Brooke, will also come up when we get into the activity. We're going to try to spend more time on the activity this round so that we can have a little more discussion and understand. You know, it's difficult normally when we do this in person. You have all these pictures on a wall and people have stickers, and you can kind of have a conversation as you put stickers on the wall and talk about why you like it. So I think not only is the vote, but also the reason why there's a vote is really important to us.
Do you think that maybe you have a gallery in the building that to be like white walls, and so you can hang everything there and keep the other places like cozy? And because the interior design is very important. And do you think that you will have a gallery in the Portland Community Squash?
We just have to see what space allows when we program, whether you redefine another wall for that, or it's in the main space or in the entry area. We just don't know. That's what we're doing together, and what we will continue to do after these sessions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It will be a great idea, you know, that then you will be part of the bigger community like Portland. So have a gallery, and then you have exhibits.
Yeah, I think we should add that. We should definitely add that to the list of things to include in the program. We have 15,000 square feet. We can definitely, we definitely need, you know, some way to display exhibits.
I mean, the question is also about the duration or the type of those exhibits. Is it something that you'd want to be like permanently on display, or is it something that you might want to set up for a certain event? You know, like, is there some kind of flexibility that is required, or is it a dedicated thing?
I think you can set up for events, you know, to be like an exact gallery, but for the art in general in the building, like, it's very important, like sculptures or like paintings. But for that, the place, that an exact place to be a gallery, so maybe for events. For instance, like now many places like in Portland, like the Press Hotel, you know,
yeah,
the Press
that's a great comparison.
They have a gallery, and like they set up, you know, like from events, and I think every 2-3 months or something like that.
Tyler, when you come up, we should stop by the Press Hotel, because one thing Keith is getting at as well is that they've done a beautiful job balancing permanent and temporary exhibits within their space. So, well, Keith, let's add that to the list of elements for the program.
I've heard of it.
Good.
I've heard of it. Okay.
And Barrett, I have a question, maybe to the engineer. Like, is it like to Kifa's point? Is it possible to have, like, there are walls or separators where you can make the space as big as the attendees coming or as smaller, you know, so it can give you that flexibility of utilizing the space according to whatever the event that you're having or the gathering or whatever.
That's great feedback too, Zoe. I think that's more for I think Perkins and Will is writing that down. But flexibility has definitely been a theme tonight.
Yeah, I think
Thank
that there's
you.
a lot of ways to achieve that. That are some that are more active, like you described, more something that you open or close or slide into place. Others might be more subtle in terms of different ways of defining space, even with floor material or ceiling planes. So there's a lot of ways we can do that and work through different options for sure. One of the things that I've heard is this ability to have these larger gatherings, but also the ability to have more intimate kind of places to study or places to have a smaller, you know, couple folks having coffee, you know. So I think it's an interesting thing to think about. For example, if you think about this image on the left, the way that it's set up with a couple different levels starts to allow for smaller gatherings. But then if you were to think about if you wanted to have a larger event, you might move some of the furniture out of the way and you could understand that entire space as one space. Those are
Should we go on? I mean, yeah, let's go on to the next. I mean, I think everybody everyone's going to come to realize the scale of this space, and we're talking about wishes and dreams, but in the end, we have a certain square footage. So we'll have to ensure that we are the most creative we can be with that, but it's might not be as big as you think. Is that, we'll get to that.
Very fair.
But I think
very
as
true.
we start to look at concepts, we can, you know, pursue an option that might preference one direction and then have another that tries to solve those challenges a different way and compare the two and find out what works better. And just as you said, Brooke, dealing with the conditions that we have to work with. Yeah. We're going to have a chance to talk more about those kinds of things with some more images as prompts, but I want to make sure we get through to that before. So if it's okay, I'm going to shift to our story from Kifa.
Yes, okay.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now. So Kifa, you can have the screen.
I have this screen is like storytelling. Okay, now should be I will be on the pin video. Okay.
We see you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk about the Portland Community Squash. Why? What makes this wonderful community like special and in Portland? And then to tell like short stories about my youth in Baghdad, and to read a poem, home. That's okay?
Sure.
Okay. So the first thing that Portland Community Squash honestly represents like the diversity in Portland, Maine. And this is really wonderful, you know, to gather like different races, ethnicities, and cultures, and to put them together like as a family, as a team, and to think together, to create together, and to imagine together, and to decide for the future, for the present and for the future. The second thing I love at your community, it's like a different generation. You see that children, like teenagers, and then you see that I say like older people. This is really wonderful, because it doesn't mean that always the young generation learn from older people, but many times for me that I learn from kids. So to practice and to exchange the experience, this is very important. And another thing, I like the leadership in your community, like young people. I think this is very important. I believe in that, even in everywhere, even in politics. We need in new bloods, the new generation to think, but not to, because older people, most of the time they think about rules, many rules. And for young people, no, they are bold, and they are not afraid from new ideas. And this is really I like, and that makes Portland Community Squash is very special. The leadership is like youth and young people. And also that the beautiful thing that the combination between like sport, like squash, and that mean movement, sweat, and these things, like the combinations between like physical and physically and mentally. So you are working on two different things. You are working on that to create and to imagine new ideas for everything, how to design that for the future, for our communities, but also that to practice, this is very important. And I believe that everybody needs that, young and old. And the last thing I would like to share about that, the Portland Community Squash are open, like open-minded, and they accept and they listen, and this is really important. We don't learn if we don't listen. So listening is very important, and I see this in your community. I say thank you so much. This is about the Portland Community Squash. And the story, it's, what do we know about the others? So the first time when I moved here 10 years ago, then I had a chance, like to work in different places. I was like an adjunct teacher at SMCC. So I have a friend and a teacher there, and she thinks, or she believes that she knows me very well. And the first time that we met for a coffee, and she said, "Oh, Kifa, I know about you, about your childhood. You grew up in a big desert and caravans of camels and tents." And I really surprised. I was speechless. And they said, "Oh, really?" So she inspired me to tell a story. So I grew up in Baghdad, in a place was more green. It's like on the Tigris, and orchards everywhere, like any fruit, different kinds of fruit. And the Tigris River streams like a blue necklace, women necklace. So I don't know, and I haven't seen a real camel until I was 26 years old. So and then I told her, "Oh, my dad, we had no camel, but my dad had a black Studebaker and Dodge pickup when I was young in my childhood. This is what I know. So then she said, oh, but you cannot deny that. I believe that you spend the 24 hours praying to God in a mosque. I said, really? So this is what, like some, and we don't know about others. And I said, oh, when I was 17 years old in Baghdad, I had long hair to my shoulder. And I wore how can I say that? I wore a pant like with a 17 inches wide.
Bell bottoms.
So, yes, thank you. And then I listened to like Jimi Hendrix, Aerosmith, Jackson 5, like Osmonds. And I purchased a Spanish guitar and tried to play with my teeth like Jimi Hendrix in one of his songs. So I said, this is me when I was in Baghdad. It's very important. I think that your community gather like different cultures is very important. So it's a great chance for people to meet and talk about their journey in life, about their communities, their places. Baghdad is not like Thousand Nights and Nights. It was like but it's like modern big city, and is not like Alibaba and Sinbad and all these stories from olden times. So this is about the story. And also that I grew up in a very special site in Baghdad. Then, unfortunately, it became on the news, on a sad story I would like to share with you, Abu Ghraib. So this is people when ask me that where I was born, and they say in Baghdad, they ask for more details where in Baghdad, and I said, I was born in Abu Ghraib. I said, oh, you were born in the prison. I said, no, there is a prison, but Abu Ghraib is so wonderful site in Baghdad. It's more green. These are the story. I would like to read about a poem titled Home. What it means home for us, it doesn't mean that only the place where we were born. It is I believe home that the place where you find ourselves, when you have your voice, when you have you enjoy or you practice the freedom. That I believe this is home, that where we find ourselves. So I'm going to read. Home. My mother's womb, her breasts, her lap, her heart was my home. My father's arms, his warm shoulders, his perfumed skin was my home. My childhood hometown, where orchards were full of vines, quince, fig, date palm, and lemon tree, was my home. Soon I grew. An old divination predicted my long departure. A rotten bunker in fierce war was my home. In a big desert where I was a stray, I found myself without a shelter. My body was my home. A perilous journey left me in a prison of war. Its walls were dunk. I learned not to lose freedom. I defeated nightmares. My mind was a free bird. Dreams rose from ashes. I dreamt of a home, its surroundings a garden, a size of the sky. My imagination grows, my soul is mystified. Wherever I go, I find home. The wind is my home. It takes me onward. The cloud is my home. I ramble in a blue dome. My home is petals of marigold. Words of a poem are my home. 62 years of travel, escape, prison, exile, migration, and refuge. I found a home in the last station of a tortuous route. It contains my dreams, hope, play, and love. A home full of peace. The blue sky and the blue ocean meet beyond its windows. My home is here, Portland. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Great, great.
It's amazing. Thank you.
Where can I find your Arabic books? I'm interested to read.
You want me to read Arabic?
Can you read
You
this
know,
one?
many times I read in Arabic because people like, this is when I start, I use my performances, presentations, I start with Arabic. So people, they like, you know, it is different than to read in English. So just I would like to share with you, this is like a little bit about a dream.
Yes.
حلمت بشباك صغير يأتيه هواء معافى يطل على سماء زرقاء تسافر فيه الغيوم البيضاء تأتيه الطير أسرابا كالهواء حلمت بشباك صغير بحجم كفة يدي يطل على بحر تسافر فيه عيناي إلى الموج الأزرق البعيد تأتيه الشمس صفراء توقظ الصباح ويأتيه الليل مرصعا بالضوء شباك يحمس فيه الثلج يتعلق فيه القمر والمطر يأتيه خريف الألوان وربيع البراعم الفواح شباك صغير أعد فيه صباحاتي ومساءاتي تعشع فيه ذكرياتي أزرع فيه أحلاما خضراء حلمت بشباك صغير بحجم كفة يدي أطل منه على حبيبتي حين تأتي من بعيد تلوح لي بأنها آتية عن قريب تحمل بين ثنايا القلب خبرا سعيدا شباك صغير أطل منه على بقية عمر جديد حلمت في مكان ما وكان حلمي الوحيد وعندها تنتهي كل أمنياتي أن يكون لي شباكا صغيرا بحجم كفة يدي حلمت شكرا شكرا that means thank you
شكرا كثير رجعتني البيت.
yeah
Very, very powerful.
have Zoe and Rania, yes, and someone else knows Arabic. So I'm the ambassador of the Arabic language in Portland, in Maine, honestly. I have a site bilingual, like the first Arabic English website in Maine, and arabiclanguage.me. And we have followers, interesting story, we have followers from the Arab countries, Middle East, almost like 3,000 people, they follow us. So we represent Maine because many people, they ask us, where is Maine? They thought in Canada.
This is great. Awesome. Thank you so much. Please, I would love to like get your book. So Please send me info for that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
In the chat.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
We
Check
put
the
it,
chat.
yeah, we put it in the chat, Rania.
Awesome, thank you. I don't know if anyone on the call knows, but Baghdad, where Kifa's from, is the center of the biggest Muslim city for intellectual and educated people. So it's a very inspiring it's the home for history and art and Muslim and Arab world. So it's one of the biggest cities in the Middle East. So yeah, wanted to mention that. Thank you, Kifa, for your story and for poetry.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a tough act to follow, but I'll try, I guess. I'm going to share my screen again. Can you all see my screen again?
Yes.
Living design presentation, how?
Mhm.
Okay. So we're just going to take a few minutes to get through this and try to leave the rest of the time for our discussion. But we wanted to give a little presentation about how we approach design at Perkins & Will, and try to give a few examples of that at different scales. So we're at a critical moment as a culture, as a profession. We're facing some really difficult challenges with the Earth's climate changing, with ecosystems changing, and we have a huge opportunity to make a difference. And so our approach to design is really an integral one. And we think about it in these 5 categories, and all of them relate to each other. So inclusion, resilience, sustainability, regeneration, well-being. We think of these as the sort of 5 interdependent elements that we bring together in any design. And so this is something that we will use as a lens for how to develop the design of the project. So each project relates to different perspectives. One of the things that we've talked about throughout our visioning sessions is this idea of inclusion and integrating diverse backgrounds. That also relates to well-being. It relates to resilience. Each of these perspectives are related to each other in different ways. And so it's not that sustainability, for example, is an add-on that we layer in separately from our other efforts during design. These are all interrelated and connected. And it's something that we will be discussing throughout the design process. So this is maybe one way to understand how a building could be through its life dependent on its design. And so you can see here a sustainable sort of steady state of a building. Maybe there's a shock that either could throw it out of into a tailspin basically, or if it can bounce back and get better. And what's I think important to note here is that this level after a shock, after sort of something bad happens, is actually at higher state. So I think a successful design can actually build on the challenges that a building might face or a community might face. Couple things, this is just to note that within each of these kinds of categories, there are standards and rating systems that relate to those scales of design that we can consider and help guide through that process. You may be familiar with LEED as a building standard for measuring sustainability. RELI is a standard that looks at resilient design planning. There are these other standards as well that have applications depending on the project. So I want to give a couple examples of how projects might accomplish some of these perspectives. You've seen a few images from this project. I reference it. It's got squash courts in it. It is a much larger project, but it serves a diverse community at a residential school and had goals for all to benefit. So couple things that this project does from a sustainability point of view, major decisions in citing the project allowed for the reuse of waste heat from the adjacent ice rink, which would have been exhausted into the atmosphere, and instead we use that energy to heat this building. So it reduced the energy usage by half. If you see sort of this optimized systems, efficient lighting, waste heat, that was what was a major drastic reduction. And then by using solar panels on the roof to offset that remaining energy, we're able to achieve a net zero energy design. At the same time, this project is really about a space for all of the students at the school to gather and exercise and spend time. It's not actually just about the squash courts or the indoor track that are the major program elements. So the fact that it's got big open glass windows to the walkway, allowing everybody in, whether you're a varsity athlete or someone who's just looking to get a little workout in. It's also got generous spaces in between that people can use before or after their practice possibly. So this central stair space that is in between the squash courts behind here and the track to the left becomes an informal gathering space. It also informs the branding strategy throughout so that all activities are represented and that it's not any one type of person who's displayed on the wall, but more anyone and everyone. More abstract reference to the people that use the building, emphasizing movement and the dynamic quality of the space. And so you see that spread through. This is an elevation of that central stair, showing some of those kinds of imagery. And you can see some of the icons that form the sort of texture. And these are some of those spaces in between where people gather to do homework before or after class. Instead of it just being a stair, it becomes a place to study or to hang out. And you can see what is going on, where your friends are playing before you or after you. Another story about this project was the way that we configured the locker rooms. And we worked with their LGBTQ group on campus to understand how to configure the spaces to be most inclusive. And so it was critical to them that there was one door to the locker room suite. It wasn't that off of the main hallway there was a boys or a girls door or a gender neutral door, but rather one door, so that anyone comes into the locker suite, they use that door. And from there you can make your choice. And all options are provided. And also the two locker rooms on either side, which in effect are boys and girls, are designed so that they are symmetrical. So there are no urinals in the locker rooms. So they could choose at later date to organize it so that there's lower classmen in one locker room and upperclassmen in another. And then there's individual changing areas for privacy. So it was really a process of listening to what would work for them and configuring the building to provide that solution. So if we hadn't had that conversation with the user groups, we would have probably had a very different layout, because it's not really the typical configuration. Here's another example of a very different scale, where we worked on a historic farm in Boston, the Mattapan area of Boston, that was completely dilapidated. And we restored the farm and the barn and created this space for people to come and have sort of a community garden. You know, we salvaged many of the sort of historic structure and brought it back to life, working with different nonprofit groups that were partnering together and creating a place that became also kind of a gathering and teaching space for how do you know, wash the produce that you picked and then maybe turn that into a meal. So this, you know, a very different scale, right? Adaptive reuse, a more urban scale, smaller scale, but equally powerful. So just a little kind of introduction to how we approach design, and really what we want to spend the rest of our time is talking about these ideas of our design language. So this is going to be a Menti exercise again. So if you want to go to menti.com and enter the code 4053936, and maybe somebody can drop that in the chat. Does everybody have that number?
No. Oh, yes, here.
Can you, Barrett, I don't know if you've been able to, or Brooke or Rania, can you just put that in the chat?
Yes, I just did it. Put it on the chat.
Okay, thank you. So we wanted to talk about these ideas of design and hopefully have a discussion. We're going to use Menti to vote, but we're also hopefully going to discuss as we go. We're trying to leave more time for this than we had for the last exercise. So your existing building, you can see here, familiar with it, brick, glass, exposed wood structure, some of the things that you know, you have as your existing context, right? So one of the things we talk about this space that we're imagining, and it's right off of the street, right in the courtyard, right? So it's, you know, this is our potential site right in the front here. So what do we think about our relationship to the street? Do we think that this is sort of a very open, transparent space that is visible and open to all, from outside to in, inside to out, glows at night, you know, plays sort of deference to the existing structure in that it is very simple and clean and glassy? Or does it have kind of a more screened approach? I suppose on the far end of the spectrum, it could be more private. We're showing kind of in between here with these other screened images.
Tyler, I just want to make sure that everyone got into Menti, because these are the same photos that you guys are going to vote for on the Menti. If everyone got in, and if anyone has a problem, just let me know. I can see there's like 5 people got in, which is good.
I think we should, you know, we should talk about it before we move on to the next one. People should chime in as they, even now as they're putting up their ideas. We could hear your voices on these ideas.
Yeah, maybe I can, trying to think if I could do like a split screen where we could see the voting, or maybe people can just chime in.
I have a question. So, oh, I was going to say mine just changed. Mine didn't have the images, so they just came up.
Okay. But even if you don't split the screen, maybe, you know, Tracy, if you had an opinion, you could start kicking this off and talk about why you picked one, which one you picked and why.
Sure. This was something screening, and I guess the relationship to the street was something I'd mentioned on my images. Both, we have a lot of transparency within our building. Playing on courts is a pretty vulnerable position as someone who's I joke, a 9++. I'm always in the bottom. It's, you know, you feel very exposed in front of glass. And there's something, especially with the street, if we're trying to welcome people who might not be familiar to us, that having some sort of screening does provide a sense of privacy and security. Also, I think that there are a lot of opportunities with screening to pay deference to different cultures that have that are affiliated with PCS. In a lot of architecture in warmer climates, screening is used. In image 2, for example, which is actually the image that I voted for, it's used to provide like natural light, but also shading, so that and security, all those sort of things, you know, in areas that don't have heating. But there are other ways we can use it here. So anyway, I won't go on, but I think screening could be important for us.
That's great. Can someone else chime in here? Watch out, because I call on people like you, Oscar. Oh, he's having that. You're having an audio problem again. He had this in our group.
Just put it in the chat, Askar. Keep the texting going.
Okay, so can someone else chime in?
Yeah, I was just going to chime in and say one thing to consider when we're talking about what will be right on the street is that we are in like a very residential area.
Right.
So I think feeling like very welcoming in terms of like people coming in, but also being respectful to the neighbors who are just across the street and just next door is something that's going to be important to think about.
That's a really good point. And what do you think is most respectful to the neighbors?
No, I think I'm with Tracy on this one. I really was drawn to 2, sort of like an open, airy feel, but also some screening.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Still thinking on it. At first I was like, oh, definitely wide open, like bright. And then I was thinking, oh, but we do have people across the street. So what is that? I don't know, for them to think about their perspective too.
Yeah, for all the reasons above, I voted for 1 and 2 because I think there are ways to create some great effects with screening and also privacy throughout the space, but also create some beautiful views into and out of the space at the same time as we play with heights and levels and spaces. I know it's a small space, but I think there might be a way to achieve a little of both.
Yeah, absolutely.
I liked 4 because it's like open and bright, but it appears that, so would those things that are open like close, or would it be like that in 4? Do you understand my question?
Yeah,
Yeah,
those are pivoting.
So they would close.
Yeah.
So like it
I think
appears
what we were
that
trying to get at there was sort of transparent or
right, because
translucency.
it just appears like you can't see through it. Like if you
Yeah.
opened it, you could. So there'd be like that inside outside. I don't know, but so I liked that just because like two, I am agreeing with what they're saying, but I'm just thinking like it just makes the space so dark, which would be
The
really
other thing about 4,
stressful.
Lauren, that you're maybe picking up on is that the angled nature of those screens or fins
It's
will
not directly open.
Yeah, so if you're walking along the street and you're looking at it from one angle, it might look more opaque, but then on a different angle, you might get a glimpse inside. So it allows for that kind of dynamic relationship to the
Right.
street.
And remember, you don't need to be literal because all of this is pretty interpretive. 2 might be less transparent, but that might just be part of it. 4, you could have fins where you frame views, but then you deny the view and create more privacy. So never think of our images as saying this is it, but rather we should be inspired something, you know, inspired by the imagery. So do you want to move on or do you let them? Okay.
We've got about, I don't know, 8 or 10 of these, right, Rania? So
Okay.
we can keep moving. We can also go back.
Yeah, this was a good one, though. I think this is good feedback. We'll go a little faster.
So kind of along the same lines, thinking about facade materials, again, sort of screening, texture. So the one on the top left is a series of screening panels with a texture that you can really see. Top right is a translucent material that will allow light to show through, and it will create a beautiful diffuse light inside, but it won't allow for direct vision. Bottom right is similar to the first one in that it is a screening element, but it's got a very different kind of aesthetic in that it's like a perforated metal screen versus a wooden kind of screen. And then on the bottom left, you have a really textured masonry facade that is going to be opaque, but provide a really textured front to the street. So it kind of has that movement in it. So Rania, you can go to the next page on Menti if you haven't already. And as Brooke said, again, these are obviously just sort of a few options. This isn't the only thing, but it's sort of like, what does each image represent, and what might be the reaction to that?
Yeah, understand.
Rania, we getting good response on Menti now?
Yes.
I think people should chime in because it's not like we
Yeah,
have a
let's hear some more.
huge population. Zoe, what do you think?
Yeah, I selected the number 2. I don't know, like I like how it feels. It's again, it's transparent, it's beautiful, and I think it can be appealing for different communities. Also, like I don't know, I like number 2. I'm always attracted to this kind of designs.
Maybe one more and we'll move on.
Yes. I have chosen, can I talk?
I Okay, you can go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I have chosen like number 1 and number 4. And why number 1? Number 1, it's remind me about the classic. I see the pattern is beautiful. And the attraction is very important. I mentioned that each, like the building from outside, like an art piece, you know, a masterpiece. It's very important. This is beautiful, the pattern here. And when I look to the number 4, is like modern, but also the space and the light and shadow is so beautiful. Combinations between light and shadow. I love the number 1 too. This is more modern, but the number 1 is more classic. But both is beautiful, are beautiful, because it's very important that the attraction. I think the building, maybe it should be like to be as an art piece. Yeah.
Just to chime in, one thought here is that while we have a narrative and a story and something that we're telling, we also have an existing condition. We have the site, we have the existing building, all in which we have to relate to in a contextual way. So we'll take all that into consideration as we move forward. Who was trying to speak up before we move on?
That was Adele.
Okay, please.
Yeah, I was choose number 1 because of the pattern. It can express and or determine different, speak about different, you can see different culture through those patterns, different people, different countries, the pattern of number 1, it attracts me and I like the design of those. The fact that you have a different pattern on it. I like number 1.
Thank you. Why don't we move on because we're...
So this one is starting to talk about structural expression within the space or also at the exterior. Top left is a wooden structural expression, very, very expressive of the structure. Top right is also a wooden structure, but more minimal detailing, right? Very kind of clean and simple detailing. Bottom 2 pictures are a little bit more hybrid. Bottom left is kind of a steel vertical structure, wood horizontal structure with you know, tectonic relationship of those elements. So that sort of expresses how they go together, right? And then the bottom right is starting to be particularly expressive of the form of the structure. You see these kinds of columns with almost look like trees, right? Reaching up towards the beams. So this is another kind of way of expressing the structure.
So while you're doing that, if someone has some thoughts before all of the information's in, it would be great. Maybe hear from new voices, maybe some of the students. Don't be shy. We need you. Come on, who's gonna save me? Elise, you gonna save me?
I chose number 4 since I'm kind of the open one versus closed. I think it's more inviting. And then the see-through with the glasses, with nice furniture inside so it's also gonna bring something new maybe in the neighborhood. I don't know about structure, about construction, about neighborhood, what's gonna make them happy or not, but I think it's more inviting.
All right, you don't need to know. And you don't need to know about construction. You know what you like, and you articulated that well. So thank you.
I chose number 1 because it's very modern, and it's open. It kind of has an artsiness to it, and the space, it's the way this space is created, it's optional. There's nothing that you can't really do with that kind of space.
Thank you. All right, should we go to the next?
Sure. So this is an infinite topic, but and there's no wrong answers here for sure. We wanted to talk about light. So obviously, as Brooke said, that the context within which we're working has a huge impact on the light in the space. The space faces towards the sort of the north and the northwest, and the building is to the south. So thinking about how we bring light into the space is really critical, whether it's direct southern light through a clear story window or more indirect diffuse light from the north, or late day sun from the west. How do we think about all those kinds of light angles and how they contribute to the... So in the top, you can see how light, sort of a low angle light coming through a screen element creates a really stark pattern. You can see on the top right where the actual opening becomes an art piece because of the way that you use color or film to highlight a pattern. And then you can see those colors coming into the space. Bottom right is more of a uniform light, kind of almost dissolving that boundary between outside and inside so that you feel like you're outside. Bottom left is more of a uniform lit from above feeling that, again, has that feeling of exterior, but in a more controlled way here.
One thing that jumps out to me here that I keep thinking about is just how long the winter is, and also that that's our sort of prime time for squash and gathering indoors. And so I'm a little bit wary of number 4, where you could just imagine sort of like a grayish hue that is in the main winter, sometimes permeating the space. I really like the colors and inside of number 3, where it brings in natural light from above, but then it's bouncing around off of the trees and off of that wood. It seems like a cozy place to be in the winter. I can imagine a fire in there as well.
Yeah, thank you, Lucas. That's really a very good point. It's not just about bringing the light in, but where the light then goes, right? So if you have a clear story window and that light comes in and bounces off of a particular material, that material is going to be highlighted, right? So that's a really good point.
I think one of the unique opportunities we have is the different types of light we can play with. The facing north is really easy because it's not getting direct sunlight, so good space for maybe some bigger windows, and then if we can get above the flat roof on the south side, we can bring in some direct south light as well. So that's something John and I played with early in this process. So I picked multiple because I think there's ways to play with multiple types of light in this setting.
Agreed. It's interesting though with the northern aspect, that's, the cold side, right? And so having, larger expanses of glass there will, make a negative impact thermally. So it's always a balance. All good things to consider.
How many more left, Rania?
We've got just a couple more. We'll keep going.
Okay. Yeah, this is a
So
good one.
we wanted to show some textures, some patterning, and get people's take. Some of it is more two-dimensional. Some of it is more three-dimensional. Some of it is monochromatic. We thought that this would be an interesting kind of idea and discussion.
So chime in here because it's more important to hear your voices. John, you're so quiet. What are you thinking? Unmute. You have to unmute. We can't hear you. We missed all those pearls of wisdom. So
I could not get on the Menti website.
Oh, but you see the images, so please.
I had many of the same thoughts as everybody else. I think the patterns look great. A perforated facade seems like a natural, and it ought to be very ethnic looking. The pattern ought to look like it might come from Africa and like it's not anything that's normal in Portland. It's probably possible to have really nice north light filtering in and control the views in as well as out, and at the same time insulate the wall. I don't think we want it all to be all glass, but some of those panel things and perforations might work in combination. And going back, I agreed with Elise on the most expressive kind of structure. It seemed to show wood, but wood and steel would be great. I think the roof definitely ought to have a lot of expression and structural expression.
I had a question, clarification about textures. I'm assuming that the material of these textures is not necessarily it's the texture itself that you're looking for, or both?
I think it's really how you interpret it, but I think material is really big part of understanding texture. Obviously these patterns have texture, but you can get a sense of like even the feel, right? Texture in concrete or stone versus texture in wood or cane. There is a tactility there. It's not just a visual texture, but a tactile feel.
Tato Ando does some pretty soft concrete.
And again, in the end, we're going to pull this together with a narrative and story. And maybe some of this represents the pattern making on tiles or some of the interior finishes. Maybe it talks about perforation. Maybe it talks about something in the branding or the signage, but we don't really know. We're just trying to pull out of you the stories and things you see that are important. And that's really what this exercise is about, and how we interpret it will be the development of the idea.
Well, I will say when we do get to this stage, I think this committee would agree that Adele is going to be an amazing person for us to work with. She's worked with fabrics and textiles and African prints her whole career. So those are the type of expressions that I think this committee is excited about. And so we do have some expertise when that time comes. Yeah.
We'll look for that.
Right.
I'm going to keep going then. We wanted to just highlight a couple ideas about expressing brand. This is another topic that we could have a whole, session on. But you can see kind of different approaches. For example, bottom right, large display screens that allow you to display kind of anything you want, versus large scale kind of painted or applied graphics. On the left, more kind of individualized, sort of panelized systems on the top right. All of these are quite bold. Maybe the top left is a little bit more understated in terms of its contrast, lack of contrast. Some of it is through text, some of it is more through graphics.
Personally, I think the materials you use are really going to inform the way we convey our message. If there are a lot of soft woods and plants in the room, for example, these, for examples, might fall a little short. But maybe there are some softer screens we could play with, you know, that have more of a paper feel than a aquarium feel. I know, for example, Sarah Show and Tell is a fundraiser in town. They do an amazing job at using projectors, projecting on different shapes in a local auditorium. And it is such an incredible visual experience, seeing screen and digital colors come across on fabrics. Just
yeah, that's a good call.
We have one more. Yeah, so we have one more. And then a quick exercise. Again, this is probably not enough to talk about the outdoor in one slide, but wanted to give a sense of more softscape versus hardscape. Top left is more kind of soft surfaces woven with some hard surfaces, whereas top right is more hard surfaces. Bottom left starts to incorporate more kind of curving natural forms, and bottom right is maybe more kind of confined, more man-made surfaces. We know there's no fire pit in any one of these, but that we could easily have a fire pit in any of them.
Speak up. We'd love to hear your voice because that's the important part.
I personally go toward the 1 and 3, just more green, natural space, but with some hardscape. Just think that plays well with our natural environment in Maine.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
I think it ought to be playful and not too formal. The upper left one looks great, but it's a little formal. And so is the second one. So
fair enough. Good point.
Yeah.
Sunday, where are you? Is she there? Just saw her. Adele, are you on the phone?
Yes, I am.
What do you like?
I like number 3, the form, but the green take a lot of space. If we can reduce the green, I think I like number 3.
The more organic shapes versus the more geometric.
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah.
Excellent. Anybody else before we, I don't know, Rania, if you want to quickly show the results of the surveys, give the big reveal. I don't know how many people were on it, but it might be nice just to show it real fast. We are kind of past time, so I want to be sensitive.
Yeah, the last thing we
to-
had, Brooke, I don't
I
know if we
know.
have time for this,
I
is
know.
writing a press release. Do folks have time?
They, you know what, if anybody wants to write this, but on the other hand, I think we should make sure we have a formal wrap up and thank you to everyone before we do this. And if we could also send it out and people could participate in that press release, we can do it by email. That might be fun. But Barrett, do you want to say a few words? Because I'd like to make sure we have a formal closure. I want to just say this was amazing. I think we heard a lot of different voices. We've seen a lot of different ways to get information from you, and you've been extremely participatory, so we really appreciate that. And Zoe, thank you. I know you have to go. Barrett, do you want to say a few words as a wrap up?
Sure. Of course, a huge thank you to Brooke, Tyler, and Rania for being our facilitators, and we're so excited to see where you all take this process. And to the design committee that's been with us for the last 4 nights, thank you everyone so much. More than just your taste in visuals and your and what you'd like to see in the space, we all are now ambassadors for what this project can be. And I think all of us know that this building could be something special for the city of Portland. So our charge now is to make sure that we welcome everyone into it, and truly make it a home for everyone. So thank you very much, and can't wait to see where this process goes now that we've equipped Perkins and Will with our values.
This was amazing. Thank you.
So maybe we can do the press release
Thank
as
you.
a last homework assignment.
Yep, we'll send
Perfect.
it out. All right. Thank you, everyone. We will meet again.
Thank you. We'll put the results up on the website.
Great.
And we'll follow up with the next steps.
All right. Beautiful.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice night. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
I heard you say that.